What's going on, Junkie Nation? Gorgeous George and Goes back here chatting with Paul Hughes, who's got a big fight that was just announced. He's got AJ McKee coming up here on October 19th. Big fight card the PFL's put together. Paul, welcome to MMA Junkie Radio. How are you, sir?
Doing good, Matt. How are you?
Doing good. Doing good. Seems like we have a common theme here with the Manchester United soccer team.
That's
On an
great.
early Saturday morning, man. See, a lot of people in the UK complain and say, in the UK and Europe, oh man, we got to stay up late for them UFC fights, PFL fights, or Bellator or whatever. We got to suffer too. We got to suffer the other way, when it's early mornings on Saturday. But hey, we get to talk to you, man. Man, you's delivering. Let me ask you something. You went through one spell where you had your only loss in your career, and then some decisions. But man, your last three fights, you've blown up, all finishes. Do you attribute any one thing that happened during that time were you able to, like I say, get on this win streak with the finishes?
Um, that's a good question. I think for my world title fights, which were the ones that ended up in decisions, obviously fighting very, very high level opponents, it's obviously hard to finish these guys. But
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I was coming into them fights and I wasn't at my best in terms of I wasn't physically 100% going into some of them. That may have played a factor. Whereas my last few fights, I really haven't had many issues. So that could be part of it. I'm not too sure, but all I know is I'm going for the finish every single time. Sometimes it happens, but sometimes it doesn't. But most of the time it happens.
Yeah, because when we talk to a lot of fighters early on in their career, they're getting the finishes, and then as the opposition gets tougher, then they'll have a decision or two or whatever. But
Mm.
with you, it's been different. The opposition's gotten a little bit tougher, and boom, you're clicking. And another thing, you're going to be fighting, for the third time in 6 months overall. And a lot of people forget it's not just the fight; it's the camp too, right? And the weight cut. But is this the type of pace you like? You like to get on a roll like that and just, one fight after the next, or will you seek out maybe some time, maybe after this fight, to just like improve, right, and rest?
Well, look, after this fight, I may have some time to the next fight. If I'm doing the season next year, it begins in April, so that's a lot of time. But in terms of this year, signing with the PFL, one of the reasons that I done that was I knew they were going to keep me active. That's what I wanted this part of my career. I'm coming into my prime. I've just recently, as of 3 fights ago, moved up a weight class. So I'm not worried about big weight cuts. I'm worried about getting in there and competing as much as I possibly can and making as much money as I possibly can. So I'm in a great place.
I'm sure you don't need any type of motivation, right? You're facing AJ McKee. This is going to be big fight card. But the other day when Shabali and Usman were fighting, there was the talk of now, well, Usman could be fighting AJ McKee. Is that kind of like a nice motivator for you, knowing like, well, if you're talking about AJ McKee for the champ, should PFL and Bellator, I guess, depending on how they merge things or whatever they do, is that something that would interest you? Is to fight Usman Nurmagomedov, or are you more of the regular season playoff guy? Give me my $1 million.
Well, look, I mean, right now, what is the most exciting to me is definitely fighting Usman. I mean, that's Russia versus Ireland #2. It's an Irishman versus Nurmagomedov. Obviously, there's going to be storyline there as well with AJ supposed to be the next guy up, but whenever I beat him, then it's got to be me next. So Usman is also a guy, I've called out a couple of times on social media. I was going to call him out after my debut with Bellator, but he had just got booked that week. So, he's definitely someone that I've kept my eye on. And, whenever I beat AJ, then we'll see what happens.
So that is interesting. An Irishman against the Russian, Nurmagomedov. Because I was looking at your social media, obviously, Conor McGregor pops up on your page as well. Is that something where you would want McGregor maybe to be a part of your corner just to spice things up if it ever got to that?
Well, if he wanted to, how could I deny, one of my inspirations in the sport, a fellow countryman and Conor McGregor, in my opinion, the greatest to ever do it. If he wanted to do it, I'd be down for that. No problem. That'd be fun.
Man, you got me fired up. I'm going to go back to
Mhm.
AJ McKee here for a second, though. A guy like AJ McKee, we know what he likes to do, and he likes to have fun out there, and he likes to poke at his opponent. Do you enjoy that? Do you like when you have a rival on the other side that kind of likes to poke the bear? Does it feel like it pulls out another gear inside of you?
Yeah, 100%. Look, I'm just a competitor to the core, and I do talk shit whenever I'm fighting. I'm not even like a dickhead kind of way. Like it's just a competitor kind of way. Any fights that's happened before has been big events. I remember fighting Jordan Vucenic, rematching him, and being in there for 5 rounds, and I was just talking shit the whole time. And I don't know what it is because it's not me as a person. I'm not really a confrontational guy, but I know for a fact whenever I get in there with AJ, whenever I start stuffing takedowns, whenever I start cracking him, I'm gonna be talking a little bit of shit. So we'll see what happens.
Paul, what do you think of that moment that you just talked about right now? Let's just say early on in the fight, because we know what AJ likes to do. He likes to wrestle. He also likes to throw hands. But when you do stuff that first takedown, what kind of message do you think you send to a guy like AJ McKee? And what do you think goes through his head?
Look, I think, to be honest, I think that he's gonna shoot very early on me. He's got to test me at least, to see where I'm at grappling wise, because not a lot of people have shot me recently. I've kind of realized that. But I mean, I'm absolutely world class in every area. If he wants to wrestle, if he wants to shoot, then bring it. Bring it. Whenever I'm sprawling on him, talking shit, cracking him back, shooting on him, taking him down, then we'll see how he reacts to that. Because this is the young hungry lion coming up against the guy who's been there, done that. So, um, it's exciting to see what's going to happen. To be honest.
Yeah, no doubt. Hey, since I brought up McGregor's name a second ago, that's a cool pick with you and Ian and Connor, right? And I was just checking out the comments, and allow me to be nosy, but somebody goes, "Was this the Shane Gillis night?" And he's one of my favorite comedians. Is there something to Shane Gillis and you and or whatever
I
anything
don't
of
know
that?
where that came from, but I'm also a big Shane Gillis fan as well. So I don't know where that came from.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. Because somebody answered like, "Oh, I don't know, like maybe being coy or whatever." So I was just wondering, yeah. No, so nothing went down then.
I don't know. I have no clue.
That's hilarious. Um, do you have you learned a lot with those guys? And I'm sure they probably learned from you. What's the synergy, I guess, between you three? It's like I say, cool pick that you guys took.
Yeah, 100%. That was a really cool full circle moment for me and for I'm sure Ian as well. I've obviously known Ian a long time. We came up together on Cage Warriors, and whenever we were coming up, like McGregor was the guy. Being a young Irishman coming up and seeing McGregor doing what he done. Having after having nobody really from Ireland do what he had done, to have that was obviously a huge inspiration for the likes of myself, for the likes of Ian. So whenever we were down and we had dinner with him in the Black Forge, it was surreal. It was a crazy experience that kind of wasn't even planned. I was just in Dublin hanging out with Ian because he was in town just to say hello, and it just so came about that we ended up having dinner with Connor that night, and it was very cool, because it was evident that he cared about us young lads coming up as well. Because me and Ian probably the next two guys in terms of like Irish prospects, at least then anyway. So it was a cool full circle moment, something that definitely kind of invigorated me at the time.
They say you can obviously learn a lot from training, but sometimes you can just learn a lot from conversation. Can you give me a good example of either one of those two or someone else where you've learned a good technique? Is maybe you can give us a name of someone that taught you something really good in training, and then maybe somebody that's ever just put their arm around you and given you great advice,
As in
related.
like a mental piece of mental advice. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, it can be that, or just maybe somebody saying, "Hey, if you put more of your hip into your kick, you'll have a better calf kick," something like that.
Well, I mean, on talking just of Ian and Connor, I remember Ian showing me something off the jab. We were in South Florida. We were at a karate combat show backstage, and I remember I can't even. We were in the back room. We weren't
Mhm.
watching the fights, but we just got into talking about details of fights. And I remember him showing me like a little detail of his jab and how he sets up his jab. So that's the first thing that came to mind there. Like, Ian's a very good jabber, very good boxer, and it's actually something I've continued to use throughout my career. So that was the first thing that came to mind.
Very cool. All right, Paul. Hey, nice to meet you, and happy to tell you that Manchester United just added another goal. So great morning for us, great afternoon for you, and hey, October 19th, man, it's gonna be a fun time for all of us. You versus AJ McKee. Thank you so much for doing the interview. We'll talk to you soon.
My pleasure, lads. Have a good one.